Welcome to the Mindful Healers podcast with
Dr. Jessie Mahoney
and Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang.
We are here to help you learn to pause and be present, awaken your breath, and harness the ripple effects of mindfulness for radiant health.
We get you. We know you. We are you.
We have both been successful on the surface, yet struggling underneath. We have both had cluttered brains, been overwhelmed, and exhausted.
We're healers who have found solutions and want to share them with you.
Join us here to discover a better way.
Welcome. A reminder that our podcast is not medical advice. The intention of today's episode is to introduce a dear friend and a teacher of mine, Dr. Yvonne Ator, to you, our listeners. We'll be sharing parts of her inspiring journey to hopefully inspire you, our dear listeners, and you might just learn a thing or two from her to apply to your own life. Dr. Yvonne Ator is one of my teachers. Her Dare to Lead workshop was one of the last in-person workshops that I attended in 2020 before the COVID shutdown. And I'm so honored to call her a dear friend after getting to know her a lot better over the last year. She is a skilled personal and executive coach for mission-driven physicians. She has so many certifications to name, some of which include that she's a certified facilitator of the Daring Way and the Dare to Lead workshops from Brene Brown. And she's also a certified coach in various other coaching methodologies like positive psychology, Unbeatable Mind, which is about mental toughness and emotional resilience training from retired Navy SEAL Commander Mark Devine. She has also contributed countless hours of her time in the Mindful Healthcare Collective this past year, putting on at one point weekly coaching sessions called Respite for Thriving Physicians. Ultimately, she is passionate about creating wholehearted culture in medicine, helping physicians thrive in their personal and professional lives without succumbing to compassion fatigue, disillusionment, or burnout while making their positive impact in the world. So thank you so much, Dr. Ator, my friend Yvonne, for being here.
Thank you so much. I am excited to be here.
We're so grateful to have you. And so you'll discover, dear listener, that healing oneself provides opportunities, should you want them, to heal others, ultimately contributing to maybe changing the world. And for our usual takeaways, I will actually let Dr. Ator share some with you at the end of the episode. So Yvonne, can you tell our listeners a bit about your unique journey?
Sure. I was the quintessential idealist, immigrant, born in the UK. I hear an echo, sorry. But born in the UK and raised partly in Nigeria and the United States. I came to, so I've always been kind of like most of the listeners, really good at school, really passionate, good at everything. And so, of course, being from an immigrant family, if you're smart and you're good at everything, then you're going to be a doctor. So that's just the path. And so for me, there was just this idea that I knew I knew I wanted to help people. I wanted to make a difference. And wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with myself. But again, everyone was like, you're going to be a doctor. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to be a doctor because I love people and I love to help. And I just had this, was really interested in humanitarianism. So that's how I found myself when I came to the States and did all the checklists, right? Got all the A's, did all the projects, and found myself in med school. And of course, overachieving, I was a Schweitzer Fellow. For those of you who are Albert Schweitzer Fellows out there, shout out to Fellows for Life. But I had my own HIV outreach organization in med school because, again, just going through med school, the fire hose of med school wasn't enough. I had to also have my own, create my own HIV outreach organization while drinking from the fire hose. And so the path was always that I was going to, I loved Oprah and I loved Albert Schweitzer. And so I knew that I wanted to do something humanitarian, to be of service. Service was really important to me. Was also in the AMSA, American Medical Student Association. So I really have that strong activist advocacy streak to me. So going to DC and lobbying for, universal child health care, universal health care, homeless rights and all of that. So just really, I was that kid who just was mission driven. I wanted to change the world, total idealist. And then during my residency, I got pregnant during my fourth year of medicine, med school. And during the residency was the first time that I realized that, oh, I was human. I just expected to, like, after having a child, to just keep going, just do all the things and keep going. And I've started noticing that I was spending most of my time on paperwork, most of my time doing everything other than the thing that brought me to medicine, which is helping people. So I had, right before I burned out, I jumped ship and went to Johns Hopkins University to then get my master's of public health. So I had never heard the term burnout. I'd never heard anyone complain about anything really. I knew that I was seeing something in medicine, which was that everybody I looked up to, all of the attendings, all of the residents, there was like a sense of like discontent and disillusionment that was just pervasive. And I came in, you can tell from my energy, I'm kind of bubbly, but I can be very intense as well. And I could see my future in these people. And I was surrounded by everyone, it seemed like, was unhappy. And I was like, what's that? What is this thing that I'm seeing where everyone that I'm looking up to, the life I'm looking to live, everyone I see around me is unhappy or unhealthy or just and complaining all the time. And so during my master's of public health that I was getting, and because in public health, you learn a lot about patterns and pattern recognition, and you think about epidemics and all of that, and epidemiology. And I was like, there's a pattern here. And I started studying, personal development, organizational development. Had this class on non-governmental management of non-governmental NGO organizations and how to manage those. So we did a lot of like leadership courses. Read a lot of leadership books. And that was the first time I learned about, personal development and organizational development. And I started to notice what I was seeing in medicine as, oh, this is a dysfunctional system or dysfunctional organization. And it explains, I was starting to notice the trends and I was starting to understand what was going on. Again, at that time, this was about 13 years ago now, 14 years ago, 12 years ago, right? People were not talking about burnout. People were not talking, it was not like, now it's everywhere and everyone's a coach. But back then, like, no one talked about it. So so then I discovered Brene Brown's work. And as soon as I discovered her work, I knew when I started learning about shame resilience, shame, perfectionism, I realized that, oh, that's what's happening. No one's talking about it, and no one's, and everyone's struggling in silence. I thought I was broken for feeling like I needed to sleep 2 hours instead of 3 hours just to function. I thought that if I worked harder, if I sacrificed more, then I would thrive in the system. I didn't realize that there was something wrong with the system. So once I learned about Brene Brown, I was like, okay, I feel like I need to really learn about there's a sentence she has in Daring Greatly where she says, the space between your practice values and your professed values is burnout. And once I heard that phrase, it just kind of set my life on this trajectory. I said, this is the thing that's happening in medicine. People go into medicine wanting to help people. People go into medicine with the sense of idealism, making a difference, helping people. And they find themselves spending most of their time, not all the time, but most of the time doing everything else but that, right? Shuffling the papers, electronic medical records, haggling with insurance companies, and, feeling stressed about what pharmaceutical companies are doing and everything, right? So it's like everything other than the thing that you went into medicine to do, then dealing with the bureaucracies and politics, right? All of that. And I said, that's why people are burning out. And still, I was like, okay, I'll still go back to medicine and practice. And, this is just something I'm doing as my own prep project. And then what ended up happening was, so 2011, so I'd already had my own experience, and I was starting to see the patterns, but I was still like, okay, well, somebody else can deal with that. I'm still going to go change the world through medicine and be a medical missionary, because that was my goal. And then, I said earlier that I was, born in the UK and raised in Nigeria, and I'd been away from my dad, my family in Nigeria. My dad mostly. Most of my family is in the US, but I was estranged from my dad. But I was starting to reconnect with him by phone. I hadn't seen him for a long time, but I got word that he again, he's in Nigeria. I got word that he had a stroke and was in a coma at the government hospital in the ICU. And so I'm here in the US, coordinating his care over there. And over there, it's a pay-as-you-go system. So you don't really get the MRIs or any of that if you haven't paid. So I'm here, dealing with his situation across the Atlantic when I hear that the doctors have gone on strike over there. So the doctors over there in the government hospital went on strike because, again, the doctors over there are kind of exploited and mistreated and not paid on time, and not really having that sense of autonomy. Does that sound familiar? And they went on strike, right, protesting and fighting for their rights. Well, my dad, who was still in the coma, got discharged from the ICU, as well as all the other patients. So now I'm here, in the US, still on the phone, trying to figure out where my dad had been sent to. Found out later that he had been sent to a rural clinic somewhere. I still to this day don't know where he was sent to, but needless to say, he died within 24 hours because, again, he was in a clinic, not an ICU. So that was a seminal moment for me. It was one of those moments where I was like, oh, this is what happens. This is far down the line, worst case scenario of what happens if what we're seeing in the US doesn't get taken care of. And again, this was 10 years ago, 2011. And so I started getting really, and about that time I'd started this journey of starting to, think about coaching and getting, starting to study. And I was really starting to go down that path. And I was starting to share my story and what I was seeing with the patterns in the US about just the murmurings on the ground. I was hearing just the sense of despair in medicine, the sense of, and I just had this feeling that something was coming. And I started being haunted by the idea that what happened with my dad would happen here in the United States if we don't take care of the systemic dysfunction, the corporatization of medicine, right? The assembly line medicine that we're seeing. And I said, okay, I think I'm being invited or called to do something, but I was like, I don't know what to do. My dad's dead, and I'm learning about this stuff, but I wasn't sure because I wasn't seeing, no one was talking about physician coaching back then. No one was doing any of that stuff. So I was really in what felt like uncharted territory. Then as I started sharing my story on social media, people started reaching out to me and asking me for help, but not sharing their names. So I was like, wow, people are not feeling safe enough to talk about, again, this is in 2011. People are not feeling safe to talk about what's going on with them, right? They're reaching out for help anonymously, so people are not able to ask for help or get the help they need at the hospitals. And so for me, that's how I started the journey, realizing that, okay, my gag is off, right? I'm free, I'm a free bird. And I can use my voice and gain the certifications and be the support and help that I wish I had when I was in medicine. When I was in institutionalized medicine, right? So that's how I, went and got all the certifications. People laugh because I have so many certifications, but for me, it was really important to equip myself to have the tools and the resources to help support people who have sacrificed. The thing is, people have sacrificed so much to make the difference that they want to make. I just felt this sense of, no, these are the people who should be thriving. These are the helpers. These are people who have sacrificed to be of service. They should be the one, thriving instead of being exploited. And so that's how I started my journey. And so I've been coaching mostly physicians. My practice is 98% physicians. But mostly physicians for a good while now, almost a decade, doing a lot of workshops and some writing and teaching, keynotes, speaking, you name it, just anything that helps provide the support, the hope, the empathy, the inspiration, the sense of belonging for those who find themselves, after sacrificing so much to make the difference that they wanted to make in the world, to thrive without succumbing to the compassion fatigue, the burnout, the disillusionment, the overwhelm, and the hyperwork that we're seeing. So I'm very passionate about bringing this work into hospitals, into organizations, but also one-on-one. And it's been like the most gratifying journey. I'm really, really humbled and grateful that I get to do what I do. But yeah, it's been and I just told you, like, the tip of the iceberg with my journey.
Wow. And to take a common phrase that you use when we talk together, oof.
I do say oof a lot.
Very technical term to describe
very technical.
The enormity, the gravity, the acknowledgement of all that you have gone through that has culminated in where you are today. So thank you so much for sharing that powerful, heart-wrenching journey. And wanted to also acknowledge that we are recording today on June 19th. This is the first time in the history of the US that Juneteenth is recognized as a federal holiday. Long overdue, but better late than never. So what's coming up for you now as an African American, Yvonne?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I was reflecting, I started feeling about this last year. So of course my views might be a little skewed because yes, I'm African American, but I'm also of African descent, and realized that slavery is not in my history. But when I first started thinking about Juneteenth last year was the first time I really, really started to feel into it. I realized that for me, actually, I know people are celebrating, and they're calling it like the celebration of the liberation of the slaves, but it's not that. It's actually a commemoration. It's a recognition of the day that the last slaves were told they were free. There was the Emancipation Proclamation was actually 2 years before that. And these people didn't find out until 2 years later. So for me, every time I hear Juneteenth, there's this sense of, when people are celebrating, it kind of feels like gaslighting in a way, which is a strong term, but that's what it feels like. It feels icky in the sense that it's if you're celebrating, then it's like, I don't see a celebration in a system that made it okay for, number one, for slavery to exist, and the level of dehumanization of Blacks that it took to do that. And of course, not only Blacks were slaves, there was also Asians were slaves, and Native Americans were slaves. And I wanted to, bring that up as well. But the fact that the slavery existed in the first place is something we really need to sit with, that it took a level of dehumanization for that to happen. That's number one. The other thing for me was the fact that there was a 2-year delay, right? It had been announced, and it took 2 years for some people to even know that it had happened. And so for me, the part where whenever I hear Juneteenth, those are the two things that come up for me. The fact that, that the slavery was even possible to begin with, and there was a system that made that okay and happen. And then the system that made it okay to not let people know for 2 whole years, to continue to exploit people for 2 years before letting them know that so Juneteenth for me really makes me want to sit in the space of, in what ways am I complicit in the system that makes it okay to dehumanize people? In what ways do I contribute to white supremacy? In what ways do I contribute to, am I complicit in the oppression? And so for me, that looks like, not looking at the ways in which I center myself on whites, right? Or internalize that white supremacy, whether it's unconscious or conscious, right? And really checking myself and really looking for the ways in which I help uphold the system, whether it's through my silence when things happen, whether it's like the centering, like I talked about, where it's like your needs are okay and mine are not. And so I'll be silent about it, or silent about my stories. And so that's where Juneteenth always sends me, to the sense of like personal responsibility that these ancestors, right, where the freedom was costly. And so for me, it's okay, in what ways am I contributing to slavery in some form of white supremacy, and how can I be quote unquote more free and how I show up, and how I share my words, and how I share my lens, and how I share my presence, just in everything I do. How am I showing up with freedom and authenticity, and not contributing to the system of oppression and white supremacy? So that's where I always go. I'm a little intense, a little left of center, but that's where Juneteenth sends me to, and that's where I am right now. Just a sense of, guys, it's not Freedom Day as in like the celebration of Emancipation Proclamation. It's more of a recognition of when people finally knew that they were free. And that gap, that 2 year, it just breaks my heart every time. And when I think about it, and so there's a sadness with Juneteenth. There's a sadness with Juneteenth that just, I feel it in my throat, just, like, wow, for people to not even know for 2 years that they were free, that's rough. That's rough. And that's my invitation to whoever is listening, right? Before you go throw the barbecue on the fire, and you go to the beach and do all your celebrations, have the conversations first with yourself, really internally reflect on ways in which you're holding up white supremacy, ways in which you're holding up the system that allows it to be okay to dehumanize minorities, right? And see ways in which you can help dismantle that system. And of course, within you, but also in your relationships, having the conversations. And really not you, if you're white, not allowing your own fragility to be the center, but having these equal relationships where it's, reciprocal, right? You center on them, they center on you, like it's right, without it being all about you. And as or if you're a person of color, right, you think about ways in which you've internalized, white supremacy, and how you use that to oppress yourself or oppress others, right? Others who are minorities. And you see, of course, how minorities oppress one another, right? So ways in which you do that. That's what Juneteenth means to me.
I'm going to have to use that phrase again, Yvonne. Oof. Let's allow
Oh,
Juneteenth to be one of a reminder, a recognition of discomfort, an opportunity for introspection. Yeah. Thank you for speaking your truth about what Juneteenth means for you and the call to action that you have really just invited our listeners to participate in surrounding
thank you.
what it means to have Juneteenth be here today.
Yeah.
And I know you know that this is a mindfulness based podcast.
Yes.
And I also know, because I was roommates with you recently at our first excursion outside of San Diego,
Yes.
that you have meditated thousands of days in a row. Can you tell our listeners about your fortitude and your sense of determination about having the drive to meditate consecutively all those days in a row? Because that is amazing. Just want to put that out there. That is amazing when it comes to installation of habit changing behaviors where meditation truly is, as I witnessed as your roommate, part of your day-to-day routine. Like how did you make that manifest?
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Thank you for thank you for asking that question. So when I first began this journey, um, I've I'm a very values driven person. I'm an idealist, right? And when I say idealist, I mean, right, a true idealist is not someone who's just like, oh yeah, I have these dreams. A true idealist is someone who believes so much in the ideals, the values you hold dear. There's a quote from Albert Schweitzer that says, grow into your ideals so that life will not rob you of them. And I take that very literally. Even my logo for my work, right, has this person with a plant in them and they're a light bulb, right? And I believe that the more you cultivate those values or ideals, the more you're able to shine your light and make the difference in the world. So for me, the idea of cultivation, even though I kill every plant that I own, but for some reason, the idea of cultivation really resonates for me. When I first started the journey, and it was really about values, and I spend a lot of time with my clients. We talk about talking about how to habituate your values, how to live, to go from professing your values to living your values. And when I first started this journey, again, being total idealist, really like about values and wanting to internalize and habituate my values, I realized that even though this was not a core value of mine, I became very intentional about cultivating the value of consistency. So it's not one of my core values. My core values are more like connection and like curiosity and all of that. But I chose consistency because I felt that if I don't get consistent with anything, this journey is not going to work. I cannot be the idealist I want to be if I cannot be consistent. And I was super scatterbrained at the time, still am sometimes, but for me, I just realized that consistency as a value is the catalyst. It's the special sauce. It's the almost like the magic bullet, except that it's not. I mean, it's not that magic. You really have to work at it, but it is the catalyst for any habit that you want to form, right? So for me, a series of events came together that made me realize that I really wanted to pursue consistency as a habit. So I got into what I call, questing. Like I started making quests because I really wanted to cultivate consistency. I was like, I think if I can just build my consistency muscle, then I feel like everything else will fall into place. So I started creating quests around different things that I wanted to habituate. So the first thing I think I had like, I started writing haikus, and, I was writing a haiku every day. But for me, the meditation, because I was a little bit of that scatterbrained ADD kid, as a child growing up, very rambunctious all over the place. I felt like meditation was something that I wanted to be consistent at. And I wanted to make it an anchor habit for me, where it's like, something that I was going to do no matter what. So I began meditating in 2014, like consistently, and then I started tracking it in 2015 on the Insight Timer app. So consistency is not really about like this, like gritting your teeth, willpower. People feel like they don't have. I talk with my clients a lot, and they're like, "Oh, I don't have the discipline to do anything." I'm like, "No, you went through med school. You've been through. Well, most of them have fellowships. Most of them are specialized. Whether it's a GI doctor or a radiologist, anesthesiologist. Like, people are like super specialized, and they're telling me they have no discipline. I have OB doctors who are up on call how many days in a row, and they're telling me they have no discipline. And it's not, when I think about discipline, and I'm going to quote from Unbeatable Mind by Mark Divine, retired Navy SEAL Commander Mark Divine. And he talks about discipline as coming from the word disciple. So when you think about disciples, when you think about students, when you think about people who are followers of a way, right? They are consistent. They show up. They're because they believe so much in the thing that they're a disciple of. And so for me, meditation was, the way I saw meditation was a way of me showing up for myself. And I tie it in my spirituality. So I'll say, no, it's also a time for me to sit with the divine, right? Sit in that sacred space, right? And so for me, it became a non-negotiable, where it's like, okay, I am a student, I'm a disciple of self-mastery, mastering myself so I can be of service to the world. So I had a strong why, right? I had a strong mission, and I'm a disciple of that. And when you find something that you're a disciple of, then the discipline flows out of that. So I began meditating as a way of cultivating that consistency, because I wanted to master myself so I could be of service, so that I could serve those who serve others, right? And you've heard me probably say a few times that, if I haven't meditated, I'm not fit for human consumption. I'm not, you just don't want to encounter me, because I want to be available for not just myself, but for those I love and for those I serve. And so for me, sitting in that space, right, cultivating that mindfulness helps me be a disciple of the way, of the way that the path that I've chosen. So once you get clear about what the why is, right, when you think about the habit that you want to form, and for me it was meditation, there are three things that you do, right? Number one, you have to make it non-negotiable. You have to make action non-negotiable. And I think about, even that I already started meditating before I learned about the disciplines of the warrior from Mark Divine. I feel like it's a good framework to use. So I'll throw that in real quick, right? So three disciplines of the warrior: authenticity, dedication, and simplicity. Because I realized that what I was doing fit into this, but I didn't have a framework for it at the time. So authenticity, whatever habit, right, you're trying to form, whether it's a mindfulness habit or working out or whatever, it has to be authentic for you. So in the 7 years, 8 years since I started meditating, right, my life has like fallen apart and like been rebuilt again. I've been through, like, maybe I'll tell you my story another time, but I've been through homelessness, divorce, you name it, I've been through it. And I've been consistent with meditation the whole time, because I found a way to show up for it in a way that's authentic for me. So even when I was nursing a 2-year-old at the time, right, my way of being consistent with meditation was, if I'm awake, if I'm awake if I'm alive today, I'm going to meditate. So I made it non-negotiable, but I also made it authentic for me, which means I don't have an altar somewhere downstairs or in another room. Like if I have to go somewhere else, it's not going to happen because I'm going to get distracted. So for me, as soon as my eyes open, I am propping up my pillows and I'm sitting on the pillows that I just slept on, right? I'm not going anywhere. So even if the children, when they were younger, had come and crawled into my bed, super disruptive, doesn't matter. I'm going to get up and just sit in my bed because that's what works for me. And as a mom, and then later on as a single mom, right? I don't have to go anywhere. I have to make it as authentic for me as possible, right? And so for me also looks like, right, using the Insight timer is super, authentic for me. I just, other apps might work for other people. I had to choose what worked for me. The second discipline of the warrior is simplicity. You have to make it really, really simple, right? So for me, it's that, again, if my eyes are open, I am meditating. Boom. Like only thing I have to do is push play on the app, right? And the time on the timer, right? I'm not listening to any meditations. I'm not searching to see who to pick. It's just me in stillness and silence. That's it. Simple, right? I just sit up. I literally open my eyes, sit on my pillow, boom, done, right? Set the timer, done. That's it. That's all I'm doing. And then the last one is dedication. So a lot of times when people tell me, oh, I'm going to try to do this, right? What trying does, and some of my clients laugh and call me Yoda, like, okay, Yoda. And I say, do or not do, there's no try, right? But when we say we try, we're leaving the back door open to not take action, right? So there's a concept called burning the ship or burning the boats, right? We arrive at the war zone and then you burn the ships. I think it was from World War II. But you burn the ships so there's no escape. You're gonna have to fight, right? You're gonna have to fight the war. You're gonna have to fight the battle. So my way of showing up with dedication and making action non-negotiable is saying, if I'm alive today, I am meditating. If my eyes are open, if I have opened my eyes and I'm alive today, I'm meditating, right? So there's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no, oh, let me go get some water. Oh, let me go pee. There's none of that. It's as soon as I open my eyes, I am meditating. So then that gives me that, there's no back door open for me to escape, right? Because once I get out of bed and go do something, maybe the child will call for me, or maybe I realize I want to go drink some water, whatever, then I am just, then there's a back door, then things start to happen. And back to simplicity, right? Even though I would like to meditate 65 minutes every day, right? Some days I can only meditate for 5, 10, 20 minutes. That's okay. Like what? So instead of having this sense of perfectionism that, oh, I have to meditate this amount of time, it's that for me, it's that, did I show up to meditate, right? Did I show up at all, right? So making the show up the success, not the amount of time I'm meditating. So making it as simple as possible, making it as authentic as possible, and showing up with dedication, what we call hair on fire, right? Taking action, like running towards the action like someone with hair on fire is running towards water, right? That's how you want to take action with that like there's no way out. This is it, right? And so that's how I was able to cultivate that habit of meditation. And it's honestly, it's carried me through the darkest, heaviest of times, showing up with consistency. And what happens is that once you start building that muscle, it starts showing up in other things. Like, I wrote a haiku every day for several years. And other things that I've done. Now, there's some things that I still struggle with, of course. I'm not this machine who's like, yeah, this habit, I have it, right? There's still some things, right? So mindful eating is one of the things that I need to work on, right? But meditation for sure, and just certain habits, you can apply this to pretty much anything. But consistency really is I feel, one of the catalysts for the life that you want to live. If you can cultivate consistency as a value, it really helps you habituate all the other values that you have, and helps you narrow that gap between professing your values, what you say is important to you, versus practicing the values. When we start to narrow that gap, that's where thriving happens, right?
So good. So much there, Yvonne. And there you have it. The practice of formal meditation, importance of consistency, and how that can bring you closer in alignment with how you show up. Thank you for being an example of that.
Yeah.
And as we close our episode today, and I hope that this is just one of many more that will have you on as a repeat special guest for the Mindful Healers podcast, that can you share with our listeners how they can learn more about you and how to reach you?
Sure. My personal website is yvonneator.com. That's the easiest way to reach me. I do have the thrivingidealist.com website and the Thriving Physicians, but Yvonne Ator is like my hub, and I'm still, of course, working on my website and cleaning things up. But that's where, if you want to find anything about me, whether it's, or reach out to me about speaking or coaching, or workshops or anything like that, that's the hub. Yvonne Ator, YVONNEATOR. Pretty much on all the social media as well. That's where you'll find me. Yes.
Thank you.
And also in the Mindful Healthcare Collective as well. You can find me there.
Yes. And we're grateful to have you be part of our executive board. I think that the disciplines of the warrior and how you shared with our listeners about how you had meditation become a consistent practice in your day-to-day life was your takeaway, but I'm going to open this opportunity up for you to share anything else that you would like to share with our listeners today.
I think it's real from years of almost a decade of coaching now. There are some recurring themes I've found myself immersed in again and again when I'm talking to my clients. I think the first thing for me will always be, it's how important it is to know what your values are, to know what matters to you. It's amazing how, we go into medicine wanting to help people, and somewhere along the way, we lose our way, we lose ourselves. And it's because we lose connection to our values, to the things that really matter to us. Values are like the compass and the guide lights, right? When you're living a life unaware of your values, a few things happen. You sense this sense of like disorientation, or just feeling lost, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Right. Just imagine that you're in a car driving in the dark, and the headlights are not on, and you have no GPS, right? You start running into things, start running into people. And so getting clear about what your values are is so important, because they really do help you orient and navigate life, and help you get to the destination, right? Of course, it's a journey and there's no there, but like, it helps you get closer to the places that you say you want to go to. So if you're wanting to go to Timbuktu and you don't have the compass on and the headlights on, you'll find yourself, in India somewhere, right? And so get clear about your values. That's number one. Get clear about them, and then start to think about ways in which you can habituate those values into practices, daily practice. The second thing I would like to bring up is the idea of the practice, right? It's fall down 7 times, rise up 8. Chop wood, carry water, like, and repeat, right? So the idea of showing up, and with our people, and I say our people, I mean in medicine, right? There's this culture of perfectionism, and most people will not try anything because they're afraid of failing or not getting it perfect, right? The idea of practice, showing up, however imperfectly, but showing up consistently for yourself, for those you love and serve. Just show up day in, day out, and then the improvement comes with showing up. So you will never have the confidence before you take the action. Confidence comes with action, right? And another thing that I find myself talking about a lot is the importance of boundaries. And again, boundaries don't really come if you're not clear about your values. So again, circling back to values, but be clear about, what's okay and what's not okay, and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And learning how to express that is a key skill that we need to have, especially as mindful practitioners, mindful physicians, mindful, people in healthcare, right? It's really important to learn to be clear, because if you're not clear, because clear is kind, right? If you don't teach people how to love you or take care of you, they don't know, right? And then you're walking around resentful and angry. They can't read your mind. So like learning about boundaries and being clear about them is really important. And I will throw in the idea of courage and vulnerability being the same thing. And this is probably, from my Brene Brown work, but, when we talk about vulnerability, a lot of people feel very, kind of scared, but, or feel like, or look down on it like it's weakness, but it's really on the other side of courage. Like it's the two sides of the same coin. And everything we want, whether it's connection or joy or belonging, they all require vulnerability. So learning how to, and vulnerability is defined as um, uh, risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure, allowing yourself to go there. But going there with your values, you hear me talk about values a lot, right? Going there with your values, going there with a sense of curiosity, right? Going there with a sense of, that practice, fall down, 7 times, rise up 8, and the skills, there's lots of skills around that, right? But it's teachable. And having that growth mindset that, you don't have to have it all together. You don't have to have it all figured out. You can get better at something, right? You can grow, right? And so those are some takeaways. And I know I'm forgetting something important, but those are the takeaways that are coming up for me that I've found myself. Oh yeah, the priorities. Really getting clear about what your priorities are. A lot of times your time is being spent on things that have been predetermined for you, other people's agendas. And this was something I saw I had to find myself talking a lot about during the pandemic, when people are feeling overwhelmed, they're like, worried about all of these things, what's happening with politics and blah, 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 right? All of the things within your circle of concern, all the things that are happening in the world, but you don't have power over everything. Like you don't have control over everything. So there's the concept of the circle of concern, which is from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey. And then there's the smaller circle of influence, or sphere of influence, the things that you have control over. I found myself during the pandemic inviting people to a smaller circle, which I came up with. So it's not part of the thing that he talks about, Stephen Covey, but I found myself asking people to focus on the smaller circle within the 2 concentric circles. And it's the circle of priorities. Like, what are the things that are most important to you? You get to set the agenda, right? So, and you should be at the top of that list, by the way. Most people tell me, give me their list, and they're not on the list. I'm like, wait, okay, pause, right? But if you're married, your marriage, your kids, your work, right? Well, most times people find themselves spending all their time on either work or something else, what the things I call shadow priorities, which are taking all of your time. And then the things that are really important to you are getting either your leftovers or no time at all. So getting clear about what your priorities are right? Putting yourself at the top of the list, because if you're not okay, all the people you love and serve will not be okay, right? So filling up your cup, filling yourself up to the overflow, and then serving from the overflow. Most of us try to serve from empty cups, right? So, so as you're pouring out and there's very little for you, then you wonder why you're feeling resentful. That's because your cup is almost empty. Like if you have a glass of wine or your favorite drink, and someone, if it's completely full and overflowing, and you have a bottle that you're just pouring into and it's overflowing, you're like, oh yeah, sure, I have more than enough. Here, have some, right? You're not feeling anything other than joy that you get to share because you have a whole bottle in like an overflowing glass. But if there's only like very little, because you haven't filled up your cup or taken care of yourself, and someone's like, oh, give me some of your your drink, and you're pouring and you're like, oh my gosh, there's nothing, there's only half a sip in here, and they're asking you for it, and you find yourself, you're wondering why you're feeling resentful or angry. It's because right, there's nothing left for you. And a lot of us are trying to serve and give from empty cups. So again, going back to the practice of filling up your cup to overflowing and serving from the overflow. When we serve from the overflow, there's a joy and lightness that comes from serving. We feel good about serving. We're happy. We're excited about serving because there's more than enough and we want to share. And that space of abundance, right? But when we're serving from scarcity, that there's not enough for me, there's not enough. Why would I give anyone? That's where that resentment and anger comes from. And anger comes from, really quickly, anger comes from, right, of boundaries or values being violated or needs or expectations not being met, right? If you're wondering why you're angry, it's because either a need or expectation has not been met or a boundary or value has been violated. So, right, so think about your own needs and making sure that you're filling your cup up to overflowing, learning how to express those boundaries, getting clear about your values, right? Being clear about your expectations, right? And that's where the thriving and the contentment happens. But it's all practice. So you're going to fail. You're going to fall flat on your face. If you dare greatly often enough, you're going to fall flat on your face. And so learning the stories you're telling yourself, as you're rising again, but you will fall many times, and and choosing to rise up again and choosing to tell yourself a compassionate story, right? So self-compassion is an antidote to perfectionism, right? So being really self-compassionate as you're doing all of this stuff and you're practicing, you're going to fall flat on your face, you're going to make mistakes, right? Choosing compassion for yourself, self-compassion, being kind to yourself, being gentle with yourself, and being generous to yourself, as in assuming that you're doing the best you can, others are doing the best they can, practicing that non-judgment. So self-compassion, non-judgment, generosity, gentleness with yourself as you try to practice and try to do all of this stuff. You won't get it the first time. You probably won't get it the second time. But as you keep showing up, right, you're creating new neural pathways that then help you, right, to develop the practice. But there's no there. It's a journey, and that's okay.
Thank you so much, Yvonne, for all that you are, for the abundant sharing of wisdom that you have imparted with us today, for being with us on the Mindful Healers podcast. And I hope that this will be just one of many more interviews with you.
Aw. Thank you.
If you listened to today's podcast and you enjoyed it, please leave us stars and reviews and share widely. If you're a healthcare professional, join us at the mindfulhealthcarecollective.com and our Facebook group. Please stay on after the sound of the bell for Dr. Ator, who will be leading us in our mindful moment.
Okay. So I would like to leave you with what I call the abundance breath. It's actually a 3 parts breath that a lot of yoga practitioners use, but I started calling it the abundance breath because I like to use it when I'm feeling kind of like in that space of scarcity, that there's not enough, And most times when we're in that space of there's not enough, we're very constricted, we're very tight. Most of us are in tunnels, and it feels very, very limited. And I like this practice because it helps me shift into abundance, into the space of there's more than enough. And so when we're constricted, even our breathing is constricted. And hopefully at the end of this, there'll be a more of an expansiveness. So we're going to do a few cleansing breaths. By that, I just mean a big inhale and exhale. Inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. And then we'll do 3 inhalations to every exhalation. So within each inhalation, you're taking a huge breath, like your largest capacity. But just when you think you're full, you're going to take another breath. So you'll probably feel it in your back or at the top of your lungs. And then you're going to take another breath, which is kind of like topping yourself up. So imagining yourself expanding like a balloon, like 3D, as opposed to like the 2-dimensional breathing that we do, right? So, and then after that, we'll do some cleansing breaths again. And again, that means just in through your nose and out through your mouth. So, all right, let's start with some cleansing breaths, taking a deep breath in through your nose. If you want to place your hand on your heart, you can. And out through your mouth. I like to place my hand on my heart and on my belly. Another deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Third breath in through your nose and out through your mouth, cleansing breath. Beginning the 3 parts abundance breath. Inhale, big inhale, big inhale. Exhale slowly through your nose. Inhale, inhale, inhale. Exhale. Inhale through your nose. Inhale in through your nose. Inhale. Exhale slowly through your nose. Inhale, inhale, inhale. Exhale. Inhale, inhale, inhale. Exhale. You should feel it in your belly, in your back, sometimes shoulders. Inhale, inhale, inhale. Exhale. Inhale into your belly. Inhale, inhale. Exhale. Inhale, inhale, inhale. Exhale. Inhale, inhale, inhale. Exhale. Last one. Inhale, inhale, inhale. Exhale. Taking a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. You should notice the change in capacity. Another deep breath in and out. The more capacity you have to receive, the more you can give. You're making room. You've made room now. Last breath in and out. So now you have a lot of space. So feel free to use this anytime you feel constricted or in the space of scarcity, not enough money, not enough time, not enough love, not enough anything, right? Remembering that sometimes you have to expand your lens, expand your space, clear out the space so that you can receive more. So you've received more air so that you can then give more and be of service more, serving from the overflow.
As always, if you want to declutter your mind, be more present, and start truly living your one wild and precious life, come find us at the mindfulhealerspodcast.com.
Work with one of us.
Work with both of us.
Start or uplevel your mindfulness practice.
Discover how mindful coaching can change your life.
Or even better, do both as part of our Mindful Healers programs and retreats. You can find links to find out more about our programs and join our communities at themindfulhealerspodcast.com.
Reach out and get started on your journey to a life better lived today.
The content of this podcast is not meant to be medical or life advice. If you choose to participate in our mindful moments, please do so safely.